Thank you, Tim, for the introduction. Jay and I are going to be partnering today to showcase Cloud Adoption Framework to you and what that means in how Microsoft is currently doing this with customers, also with people such as yourself. And I wanted to ask, Tim, should I just kick it off or should I go into the agenda a little bit first?
Sure, just go into the agenda, however you want to lay it out. And side note to the participants, we are recording this session.
Yes. So let me just quickly, if you let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Excellent, great. So what Jay and I will be presenting today is a cloud adoption framework and cloud governance model. I will focus on the cloud adoption portion of it, as well as the how do you make a business case to your constituents, right? From why you're doing this work. What is your why? And then what are some of the early steps that you have to, that we propose as part of the model? And then Jay will be going into the cloud governance model after that. Jay, do you want to do a quick introduction before I go into the content?
Yeah, thanks, Sana. This is Jay Kumar. I am a peer of, all three of us are peers in the same region. So we focus on different things. I think you guys are on the data side and I come from the app and infra side. So we all work for the customers. Here to help with the cloud adoption and any migration work and all that for our customers, and trusted advisors for helping them out with their journey.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah.
So with that, Tim, I'm just going to dive into the content. It is going to feel a little bit like I'm talking at you, but if you have a question, please let Tim know, or if you have comments, please be interactive. I love the team's chat bar. We use it actively within within Microsoft as well as with customers. I'd be happy to answer questions as we go along the way, right? Because there's enough content that we might go up to the hour. So if that's okay, Tim. Great. Okay. So, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but the idea is, we're going through a major transformation right now, not just as a city or as an industry, which, I used to think it was mostly technology, and the companies that are taking in technology, right? And it's not just an enabler, but as a front-running partner. However, it's not just modern business, it's the environment overall. It's a world order, in a sense, that's in a new normal. And we're figuring out what this new reality is going to look like, right? And if I thought cloud was important before, now I think cloud is essential. The way we've seen companies, sort of another one of our teammates provided this sort of stat where if we thought it took 2 years for any given account or a customer to transform digitally, right, from a people process technology perspective, but starting with technology, the transformation has expedited to 2 months in this current period of coronavirus, right? And then with the added social processes that are changing. Of course, this is all going to have a massive impact on business. I did a session with the Bloomberg head of data science and head of global comms last week. It was a virtual panel, and it was an AI and fintech panel. And this exact topic was part of that process. That now when we talk AI and fintech, we're not just talking about fintech anymore. We're talking about how is fintech going to respond and then create new things, right? And the same can be said for every industry. So I would say that I think we're going to see an accelerated move, not just to cloud, but to advanced workloads and services on cloud, like data and AI, and like application development and ML ops and so forth. So our mission, and how is Microsoft responding to this? Because that's essentially what this session is about. It's our cloud adoption framework, right? You may see a lot of the stages that Jay and I talked through in other slides that companies offer. And our purpose in that isn't to just add to the bucket of positioning or to just be a competitor, right? It's more about what is our unique value proposition in this? How is Microsoft seeing it? Not in terms of differentiating from what we see in the marketplace as a response, but how are we choosing our value, sort of looking inward and saying, what do we want to create in the world, right? So it is a pretty big vision and mission statement. And our cloud adoption framework is meant to align with that mission statement. Any comments? I heard someone say something. Tim, was that you?
Something else. It was something else.
Nope.
I I think someone's not on mute. If we could mute them.
Sure. Let me see.
GC maybe. Great. Okay, excellent. And so in the interest of empowering every person or every organization on the planet to achieve more, especially in this period, you know, I one of the examples that I wanted to bring up was integrating that context with the context of AI. And of course, there is the background that I have, which is the data analytics and AI lens, you know, that Tim and I both have from, you know, Tim also being an AI ambassador for the Northeast region, along with myself, right, is that Microsoft has its offerings and its technical capabilities, and often we talk about those technical capabilities, what's in public-private preview, what's, you know, coming out and generally announced. How do we partner with our, you know, with other vendors and offerings? And that conversation is valid and necessary from the technical execution standpoint and planning for cloud adoption framework, which is what majority of the session is going to focus on. However, I think at every step, and especially in the beginning, it's very important to indicate the why, right? And in our case, I find that the why isn't AI per se, right? It's not AI or quantum computing or underwater data centers or gaming or mixed reality. The why is the human ingenuity piece, right? It's how organizations and people are going to achieve more. You can use Word, and Word can be fantastic, and it can be enabled with AI and autocomplete, but Word is, and now you could have Word or AI features choose to help you with poetry as well. But the clear impetus for writing that poetry, writing what you're going to write, comes from the human side, the creativity element, the emotional intelligence, mixing with the technical rigor, mixing with the logic and analytics, right? And creating insights. So when we take, the reason I brought up Microsoft AI specifically is because I feel that even with every product offering that we have and the cloud services that you're going to adopt, you're going to have a view on that. And that view, in one case, as an example, as I offer it, could be AI, right? Is how is AI going to help us not feel overtaken by technology, like how, you know, up till this period, we were essentially adjusting our lives to be at work, right? Whereas now we're in a period, and we can take advantage of this as a gift, which is that we're adjusting work and the other pieces to enable our lives, right? And enable what adds value to us. So with that, I now go into the actual model. So I'd mentioned this before, people, process, technology, right? In any, I think the clear framework here is not that it's just cloud management framework, cloud governance framework, or, you know, cloud deployment framework, right? It's cloud adoption framework. So the thought process behind this for us is that as much as you can choose a technology or choose a cloud platform or any sort of suite, and you can start integrating them together, you can make the best of class, best of breed with the best governance model. But if people are not going to use it, then it's not going to last very long. It's going to be shelved or become stale, right? And for example, any session that we're doing, this session's only as good as the people that come to the table to attend it, right? The focus is the attendees and the adoption. In that sense, the people and process side is very heavy as well, right? And there needs to be a balance between these three components, knowing that the culture of technology, the culture of people, and the culture of process is what you're adapting along the way. In that example that I gave you earlier about digital transformation expediting to 2 months from 2 years, it really wasn't the time frame, right? Or the project management sort of schedule or the start to finish items. It wasn't any of those things, or the holiday schedule. It was that there was an impetus to make it happen forward. It became urgent, and people got it done. So putting in place that culture, not from a place of fear, but from a place of vision and drive, is what allows people to keep their creativity going, but also adopt this framework, or rather adopt cloud using this framework in the process. Jay and Tim, did you want to add anything on that, given that it's sort of the foray into this, the rest of this?
No, I think you're doing a good job. Just keep on driving.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay, good. Okay, and Tim, please check me on time. Okay, it's I'll make you go faster now. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I'm also keeping an eye. Okay, great. So I have about 10 to 15 more minutes, so I'll quickly go through this piece. the framework itself, right? Each of the terms specifically will seem familiar, as I mentioned, right? I'm going to cover strategy, plan, ready, adopt in detail. And then I'll sort of leave governance and manage, or govern and manage, to Jay as part of the larger governance model, okay? So in the context of plan, ready, adopt, we all know that a plan's, on one hand, the project is only as good as a plan. On the other hand, having a project management background myself and plan being the main focus, any plan is just made to be thwarted, right? And for you to find out that it's not going to happen according to plan. But it gives you a baseline. And so the goal is that as you are going into strategy and doing the strategy work, you're also planning along the way, right? And part of strategy planning and readiness is clearing. Yeah, I've realized now, doing this work in my personal life as well, is that we can accumulate stuff, right, which we've traditionally called legacy, and we can stay attached to stuff, which Jay might have seen from the application side, and stay attached to applications and hold on, thinking that that's the value we brought to the company, right? But it's very important to keep clearing the process. And one of the key principles of cloud is that you're not going to need to stay. You get to adopt a framework where you have a workflow and you have multiple workflows that are dynamic and moving and multiple parts, as opposed to siloed applications that you manage separately. And this is a big thing for us, because I found going into customers that they can have anywhere from 20 to 400 applications that could be, partially defunct, or could be used, could be heavily used. But what ends up happening more is what are the political dynamics, behind keeping those applications. And that can become a big blocker to adoption from the IT folks, because you first need the IT engineering and product teams to say, hey, I want to do this, right? The company's relying on you, and the company's customers are relying on you to sort of choose with integrity what makes sense to move the company forward from a technical perspective. And so when we get stuck, the main thing is to keep flowing and let that adoption happen for us, so that we can then help our customers adopt, right? And so in strategy, what I wanted to talk to you about was this idea that there are motivations, business outcomes, business justification, and your first project, right? This is something I noticed is very important, because, and I would say that out of the whole suite, each of us solution architects have different, there's diversity and richness amongst us, right? We're not all the same. And thank goodness for that. My background originally about 11, 12 years ago was from the business side. And so I constantly keep bringing that up in the middle of the conversation, but it's not the same terms. It's different at every stage. So when you do an executive briefing session, I'm giving you a view into the way we do things, or you do an use case ideation session in terms of what, envisioning and use cases can look like that we can transform, right? As the first project. Along the way, in parallel, you need to identify what the motivations are. And it could be the declared motivations and the undeclared motivations, right? The hidden commitments that people have, which there's nothing wrong with them, right? They're completely fine. But the point is how do you then get to that level of vision that you're trying to accomplish, right? And so motivations is a key principle in that, being able to list down for yourself all of them, and then be able to prioritize. It's okay, whatever the prioritization is going to be. Outcomes and justification. So the use case, the business, not use case, but business case for going for cloud is not always transactional, right? It doesn't have to be about cheaper or total cost of ownership. It could be about a range of different things that are more qualitative, right? I need to provide a better working experience. The data science professional needs to go to too many different platforms right now. We're wasting too much time on doing data engineering. Network is not very accessible. Authentication might be an issue, right? So these are all technical justifications that have business impact. And then there's business justification. And this is where I feel Microsoft, the role, we're also transforming as a partner to our customers. And I'm really happy to see the way we're doing this. And our workflow is just transforming. I think all of us internally at Microsoft, Tim, Jamie, we all have to keep learning and training and keeping a growth mindset that there's always a better way to do the things that we're doing and not make ourselves wrong for the way that we are doing things to stay positive. right? That's all important for our customers as well. So as much as this strategy document is about putting forward a framework for you, it's also about showing you through the voiceover what Microsoft's particular view is. And you will see this view not just with me or with Tim and Jay, but across any account team that you work with, in us taking this view on how we do the work with you, right? I wanted to mention this slide because I feel that it's important in showing you that how we would help you in the business justification work, right? And the business outcomes. How do you gather those motivations? You kind of go from the bottom sort of technical end, which is what we know, which is at the stack level, right? It's really it is what it is. Data is sitting on Azure. There is management, there's security, there's development tools, etc. Then there is a layer above that is really the use case deployment, the technical solution that you're going to use to deploy the business use case. And the layer above that is the business use case itself, which might not make any reference to any of our products and services. And I hope it doesn't, because it's going to be in the customer's context specifically. And in that context, there are functional use cases, right? Smart retail, which overlaps with manufacturing and supply chain. There is digital journalism, which overlaps beautifully with data journalism, which is that idea I was mentioning to you earlier about having a workflow in which people and leaders in the company participate in adding value to the workflow, as opposed to owning entire sections that they now have to take responsibility for, which can be cumbersome. And then, of course, there's the cross-industry ones as well, right? Which are happening no matter what company you're in, no matter what industry you're in. For example, a Center of Excellence that focuses on analytics and AI, right? Information discovery that is search powered. We call it knowledge mining. It could be sales forecasting, customer care, predictive maintenance is actually one that's, sort of an overlap between industry and business use case. And then there's cross solution, as I mentioned, about DevOps and app dev and so forth, which again would make not necessarily a reference, I did, to Azure VMs, but it doesn't have to, right? It could just be ML on VMs. The reason why I say this is because we do have technical experts that are like Tim, me, Jay, right? And then we have our own industry focus. And then we have deeper industry focused people as well as deeper technical focused people called global black belts that we bring in to help you create the business use case the business case for going to cloud, okay? I have an Irshad Sheikh requesting control. I'm going to deny. Apologies, Irshad. I think this might have been set by mistake, okay? So with that, I will now, the point being that, you will, as you continue doing this work, it's not just about cloud, it would be about your why. And the why from a technical perspective would be integrating deep, even more analytics and insights so that you can make your business better, one. And two, keeping that as a regenerative data cycle so that any data you get back from your customers and internally as feedback, right? Positive or negative, to the cloud performance, throughput concurrency, or to the execution of what they're trying to do, or to UIs, you can then keep improving along the way, right? My screen is not moving. There we go. So I think time-wise, I'm going to skip through some of this to move a little faster, okay? My point in this was that we help customers out with in addition to your cloud adoption journey, which is through the plan, the adopt, govern model, et cetera, right? The governance and manage. We also keep helping customers do that at higher levels as well, right? And with that comes the architectural view, which has been overlapped with the architecture from a data perspective. The data science view in terms of features that are being used, BI, and then not just stopping at business intelligence as in taking, ad hoc analytics or dynamic dashboards, et cetera, or, embedded analytics to the next level, but also integrating that with AI, right? And then leveraging cloud for everything you want to leverage it for. Okay. So I think I'm going to skip this slide unless anybody has a specific question. It's what I've already said. You're using infrastructure to power the services and then the tools. Okay. And then, of course, I mentioned adoption. We talked about tech leader adoption, engineering product adoption. There's also the idea of user adoption. And so it's very important to target the cloud message, not just for it being cloud, right? Now people know about Azure because there's been some big contracts that have been in the media. And and there's been COVID-19 solutions and tracking solutions and stuff that have been used, right? For example, by the CDC. However, oftentimes people haven't known about Azure, right, or a specific cloud platform. They do know the services they use on top of it. And so it's very important as internal stakeholders when you speak to your user base and you say, hey, I don't want you to have to go to shadow IT. I want you to stay and want to stay on this cloud. I want you to feel empowered and come to me with your questions and have faith that I'm going to address your concerns and be transparent about what's going on. You position it in the context of the role that you are speaking with, right? So maybe for a developer, it would be containerization or DevOps or better tools for CDI, CD, continuous integration and delivery. Or you would maybe do, for data analysts as a modern data estate or BI plus AI, right? The point is that you can pick what the role is, or for example, marketing. I have a few other solutions for a very business-focused audience where I talk about what does it mean to talk about cloud or AI or any of these things for the marketing team or for sales team or finance or your customer base, right? I think on this plan is pretty obvious. The point is you need to plan for the cloud adoption, right? Rehost, refactor, re-architect, rebuild, replace. And this was my point about clearing. Because refactor, actually, I was just having this conversation with another customer, Tim, where this came up, right? Where they have to sort of clear to create something new. And he mentioned the word before I said clear, refactor. And so it's very important to keep cleaning as you go, right? And it doesn't mean getting rid of stuff. It just means reorganizing a little bit, making room, making things make sense. And we can help you with that in how we set up solutions to be scalable for you, right? Not just scalable for good, then that's not a good scaling plan. You need timeframes for scale. I call it not end state, I call it desired steady state. Because even in steady state, things will keep changing and you will have a new desired steady state as you approach steady state. That is the point of growth, right? So in any healthy organization, that would be the case. And so there's sort of an adoption framework, but there's also like, what is the readiness user adoption plan for people, getting using cloud at the level which they were going to be playing at. There's communication across teams, right? From finance to cloud to governance to which, I think Jay might be able to talk to the governance angle more, right, in his section. And then there's a digital estate side, which is, I'm going through this with a customer right now. What is the architectural environment they are to have, not just based on cost, but what makes sense, right? So in Azure, whether it's through Marketplace or through native solutions, or you have other clouds, what is the way in which you're going to do this? Now we have tools, right, like CloudIn for tracking and cost chargeback modeling and seeing where, how the money is being spent, how consumption dollars are being spent. But we also have tools like Azure Arc, which allow you to do hybrid management across different environments, not just Azure. And you can continue doing it from Azure and keep your environments in that state, right? As opposed to feeling pressured that you have to move everything to Azure to make it happen. And skill readiness has an overlap with readiness in this sense too, right? There's the idea that you want to be able to have the go-to-market tools, right? The adoption targets, basically we're saying that, there's readiness is a big part of any adoption, right? And so in this sense, I call it also an overlap with go-to-market. So you want to have, what is your identification authentication model? What is your costing model per zone or per region or per business unit? What is your landing zone infrastructure, right? In terms of the infrastructure execution standpoints. I usually divide them into network, storage, compute, as is being done here. And then data design overlaps with compute and storage, right? And so these are all critical components. And then, of course, Azure's own readiness model, which is we have, ARM templates, Azure Resource Manager templates, where you can push things out, set up subscriptions, set up groups. What is that model in which you're going to design things? There was a time when I'd done a SharePoint course, I would say now 14 years ago, as I was setting up an enterprise, sort of data organization strategy as part of a comms team for internal data. And, I found SharePoint at that time to be like, there was a whole thing around RBAC, right? Role-based access control and so forth. And it was very complicated from my view. I now understand how we've improved that even more and more in SharePoint itself, but all in our modern workplace toolset, but also in Azure, and use the learnings from that to deploy naming standards and resource tagging process that will be easy and can keep adapting to scale. Okay. And then finally, there's the assess, migrate, meaning rehost, right, and optimize. Now, of course, we have programs in Azure as well, like Azure Migrate, or there's Azure, the migration sort of plan or program that can help with this. We have partners that help with this. We work very closely with them. They're not just partners that we don't know who works there. We know our partners really well. When back in the model of meeting in person, pre-social distancing, we would go out with our partners often and talk about the projects and talk about how we can help each other, where we need to bring in our product group to talk about stuff versus where the partner can handle it, where the partner needs additional information or advice, or validation, if what they're proposing makes sense. So there's a whole process we bring to migrate and different tools and a support network. Okay. And I think the important point is then how do you continue assessing and optimizing as you go through that process? One of my role mentors when I joined Microsoft 4 years ago had said to me, when I asked him about governance, having come from a company where we've been working with governance for a while, having been at Hewlett Packard just before this and working with other customers in governance, and knowing that it can be a long, arduous process and it almost never feels complete, or even off the ground. And he said, in cloud, governance is like a moving car where you have to change the tires while it's still moving. You can't really wait for the car to stop to do that. Yeah. So governance and management and the sort of who accesses what, where is what put, needs to happen along the way as you build out your services in cloud. Okay. So with that, I think I'll pause, and I think it's a good point to, hand it over. This obviously the innovation side. I've already talked about this through the rest of the conversation. I think we can. I don't have to go into detail on this, unless Tim, you want me to, before I hand it over to Jay.
No, I think it's a good time to hand over to Jay. We have a comment, not necessarily a question, in the Q&A box about the Microsoft MAPP. We can table this to the end of the session though.
Okay.
I'll hand it over to Jay.
Okay.
Awesome.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Sana. That was a great introduction to the cloud adoption framework, the processes around plan ready, assess ready, and migrate and all that. So in the migrate process, we could do just migration.
Jay, good question. Did you want to take over the slides?
Yes. Yeah, I think that
okay.
would be nice.
Okay.
Let me just share my screen.
And while Jay's sharing the screen, we'll have some intermission music. Do 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 do. Or not. Terrible.
All right. Can you guys see now?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So thanks for that great intro, Sana. So basically, what she was talking about is how we take from a planning phase all the way to migration. So migration could be just a migration or an innovation. That's what the rehosting is, pretty much a lift and shift and a migration. And innovation is whether you refactor it or re-architect it, or eventually probably maybe even rebuild it. So there are several stages of migration which we could do, or even retire the product. Like we don't want to have that anymore. So there are several R's in the decision-making process that we usually go for the cloud adoption. But now I'm going to talk about more on the governance part of the adoption process. Basically, once you have something in cloud, or even just you're trying to move into the cloud, you always need to talk about how we are going to govern and secure your workloads. So basically, there are drivers for this. Basically, this comes from the risk factor, right? Every organization has some sort of acceptable risks. So we just make sure that we don't, we run a very organized and managed environment that is mitigating all the risks, and then keep it at the bare minimum level. So we also have corporate policies that we want to apply to all these. So I'll talk about some of those things that cloud supports from a governance perspective. And again, if you look at a modern IT house, everyone is looking at speed. Pretty much the business is pushing for a shorter time to market. Developers want to have their code in production, and from there is always this tension between the business and the IT and the stakeholders. Go faster and faster. So when you go faster, there is always the risk of having unintended consequences from the security side, or even from an availability, or like from all kinds of things like that. So you all know about the agile technologies and DevOps and all that. Those all the things came off of because of this kind of a requirement that we wanted to push things faster and faster. So we also want to have a control, and these are two conflicting things. So there is this middle ground that we need to play when we work in the cloud. So it's just something that we provide as services that you can pretty much use for your environments. So from the governance perspective, why do we do governance? It's always about risk. So the risk is coming from the business side. So you have a business risk. So we wanted to mitigate that. So that the business risk is mitigated using compliances and policies. Every organization will have policies and compliance that we stick to. And then the side effect of that, or like the operationalize those policies and compliance, we have processes. So this is a chain of things that happen. Like you start from a business risk, you have policies and compliance that address those risks, and then you have processes that implement those policies. And from a cloud perspective, there are 5 disciplines that we use to cater to all these. And these are all, some of those buckets here show how we address those risks, pretty much from the cost management or a security, which you all know what all those things are self-explanatory. Then you have a resource consistency. We want to make sure that all you deploy is actually following certain standards. They have to be in the same broader controls that we select, policies and all that we have to apply all those things. So that's called the resource consistency that we need to think about. And then we just really have to have also the identities, and then some acceleration of deployment. So that's pretty much talking about DevOps and continuous integration, continuous deployment stuff. So those are the main pillars in the cloud. And again, when one of the design philosophies of Microsoft Azure is that everything that we do is very much hybrid. So we don't really think that people are just moving and scratching all that they have and going into Azure and then forget about their on-premises environment or other clouds. So we actually have tools that give you a single pane of glass that can actually connect with the wherever you are. Like, it could talk to on-premises, it could talk to other clouds, or even Azure. So that's by default. So that's why we always think about hybridity of our architecture. So everything that I talk about is applicable to everywhere, all your IT footprint, and that gives you the full-blown control of your environment. So now let's look at the operations. So governance is more like the set of policies and descriptions and the methodology, but then the manage and operations is all about implementation, or like ongoing operations of your environment. So from the point of management, you want to have visibility and control around all the applications that you host. Pretty much like, if you're looking at an organization, you have business to IT mapping, or like just like CMDB databases and all that stuff. So we just need to have a cohesive way of identifying and managing all your applications. And then you need to have proactive monitoring of all that, right? So basically it means that you want to have things before things happen. We want to know about it and correct that. So that's the monitoring and notifications. And what we mean by resiliency is about self-healing and scaling, actually. So pretty much it means that you want to have the environment run without minimal impact. It has to have the high availability. It should have recover from failures and all kinds of things. So these 3 things are the pillars of operations and management. So basically we talk about the governance, which is more like the framework, and then we have the operations, which is more like process, right? If you have any questions, please feel free to stop me. So now, when I talk, this is the full framework. When you look at the two swim lanes here, like the first part of that is all about business. The things that I already mentioned, they are the corporate policies, and below that you have the disciplines in the cloud. So and again, like Sana was mentioning, it's all the marriage of people, processes, and technologies. So we bring together the cloud governance principles, corporate policies, and the cloud governance team. So it is very imperative that we have a good team that is actually aware of this and then takes it forward from your organization, right? So this means that, without proper guidance, people are going to put things in their own, and at the end of the day, you're going to have a mess there. So we want to have this thing as part of the adoption process. The governance has to be thought through at the landing zone when you're putting the first asset into the cloud. That has to be there, and then it is an evolving process. Like, you may not have all the governance at the beginning, but then it is always like as a maturity process that you have to walk through. So now there are several tools that we support for this, and there are, and I will talk about some of those tools in the couple of slides coming. The major ones here are Azure Blueprints, Azure Policies, Cost Management, and the Advisor and all that. Cost Management and Advisor comes together. From the security side, we have Azure Security Center and Azure Sentinel. Blueprints are again for creating vetted environments, like which can be stamped, and then we can actually have a replica of all that, and then we can have policies which are like auditing and compliance kind of things. So we'll talk some of those things in the next slides. In the Azure policy, so basically what this means is it's a powerful governance platform that enables enterprises to govern their cloud environment at scale. So policies are pretty much like, whether it could be an audit policy or a deny policy, or more like a what if policy, things like that. So an audit policy is actually is after the fact. Like, you just have a set of resources in your environment, and you want to make sure that all of them are compliant to a certain standard. So this keeps rolling through all what you have and provides you a recommendation or a score around how you're doing with your compliance. And so and then it gives you recommendations on how to fix all those things. But deny policies are like proactive, right? You can actually go ahead and say, when this happens, don't deploy it. Or like, I can say that I have a policy that don't deploy anything in Europe, or don't deploy anything that has a certain size, things like that. So those are all the things that people do not want to do, accidental deployments and things like that. So those are the policies which are more proactive. And there are other automation type policies where you can have, so when this doesn't happen, do something. Like your deployment is not complete, and then it has some sort of a condition that triggers saying that when this doesn't happen, do something. Like, it's kind of a supplementary thing, right? So those are all kinds of policies you can write. So which means like there is somebody actually watching over all these things, and then making sure that your environment is compliant to whatever you are thinking through, right? So that's the policy part. And you can chain all these policies called initiatives, which are actually going to be, you can apply it at scale. The policies can be applied at a subscription or a resource group or things like that. So basically, you can actually run it at a massive scale. Now, blueprints are like, you can create blueprints, and some of the IT architects or whoever is in charge of the governance can create blueprints. Blueprints is a combination of policies, role assignments, some sort of Azure ARM templates, and resource groups, all sorts of things. Like, it's a small landing zone that has all these things predefined. You can actually attach a blueprint to a subscription or a resource group. So basically what it means is you will have this standard look and feel of everything that you create. So when you create a resource group the second time, you're going to have, let's say the resource group should have an ARM template deployment. So you will have, let's say, some something like a jump server or something like that. You wanted to have in every deployment, so you can have that already pre-assigned in your ARM template for that blueprint. So the blueprints can be assigned to a subscription or a resource group. So when somebody creates a resource group, the blueprints is assigned, and you will get the role assignments, the people assignments, the policy assignments, everything assigned as part of the blueprint. So it is more like a shell for creating all these types of custom-made subscriptions or resource groups. How does it work? It actually you define someone creates a blueprint and publishes the blueprint and assigns it to a subscription or a resource group. So after the fact, anything that happens within that subscription or a resource group is compliant with the blueprint. And so the policy is also immediately applied. So it could be an audit policy, and after the blueprint, or after this blueprint is assigned, the policies will actually from the policy side, you have to create the policy and assign policies. So the blueprints does that. Blueprint actually does everything for you, including your RBACs or role-based access controls, everything, whatever I mentioned before. So that's the concept here. Now let's talk about a little bit on the security side of governance. Right. So there are two different tools that stand out here. They are called Azure Security Center and Sentinel. These are CM tools, and SOAR is like security orchestration, automation, and response. CM is like security information, whatever. Like I forgot the name. So anyway, so basically, Azure Security Center is actually collecting telemetry from all your resources, whether it is on-prem or any other cloud or Azure, and then creates a security score from the get-go. Actually, you get a security score and recommendations and things like that. So it is more like to do things. But Azure Sentinel is more like a threat analytics, and then more like investigation type thing, right? So basically, you can go from the left to right. Security Center provides you. I'm sorry. Am I cutting over, Tim? Time-wise?
No. Actually, that's a good little stop. There's a question.
Okay.
It's are those multi?
Tim, you have an echo.
I don't know what the deal is.
It's better now.
Okay, sorry. Does this have multi-cloud in mind? And second part, does RBAC integrate with Azure Active Directory?
So RBAC is integrating with it is a good question. RBAC is integrated with the Active Directory actually. So RBAC means a role and a role assignment, right? So basically, it is similar to the security groups that if you're aware. So when you create an RBAC role, every resource comes with the 3 built-in roles called reader, contributor, and owner. And then you can create you can actually assign several built-in roles, such as like a SQL database administrator or whatever it is, like, things like that, which are coming predefined with Azure. So that's the membership gives you certain rights to do. And you can also create your custom. That's a JSON file you delete, and then you create a custom role, picking and choosing what actions you can do. So it's tightly integrated with Active Directory. That is Azure Active Directory, I would say.
Thanks. Just like it's clear.
Yeah. So I think I was talking through this, the Security Center and Sentinel. So these two are like the primary tools that it's a pretty cool tool. You may want to look at Sentinel from a demo perspective. You can actually look at several unconnected events, seemingly unconnected, but then security is not a siloed concept, right? You have people working in different places. Like somebody is trying to hack into a server. There are multiple password failures. There is a system going down. All these things may seem discrete or disjoint, but then when you combine all these things and draw the line, there may be some connection. So we have the intelligence, or basically what we have is a analytical engine that is running. It's a hosted service, which is actually almost like a data collection and analytics, like a machine learning thing that is running at the back end and giving you all these recommendations and connections. So So you don't have to really have your own tools to do all these things. It can collect telemetry from everywhere and then keep it up to date, and then gives you all the tools for operations. The other part of this thing is that if you look at in the previous when I think one of the things that we're trying to solve here is security and operations are used to be in silos. Like every time there is a security breach, the security team finds it out, and then, or maybe there is a patch coming, the security team wants to do that, and they go back to the operations people. And the operations guys have to know about what is it, and they may say, okay, there is a patch have to be applied for certain vulnerability and things like that. And they have to do a lot of reading about it. They have to come back and then apply that, and these two guys operate in silos, and they don't really know why they're doing it, and how, whether it is resolved or not. And these tools like Security Center, for example, gives you a dashboard that can be seen by both ops teams and security teams, and they can actually work in collaborative way and then see, okay, this is what is happening. And then it also provides you the mitigation and remediation factors, right? So they will pretty much be able to apply that, and then it will next time when you look at it, it's saying that is gone. So those are the things that will actually bring the teams together, and much more efficiently we can work in your organization, right? So now there are other third-party tools that actually do all these things, such as Splunk, for example, that is similar to Sentinel, and but you have to do a lot of programming with that. HashiCorp Vault is pretty much another tool that you can use. Then there are ServiceNow. So basically, this means that we are not like saying that you have to use our tools. We actually give you the flexibility. If you already have a tool that you are familiar with and you want to use that or licensed, just bring it in, and then we will be able to support that. So that's the several things that come as part of that. And now there is this next one is Azure Monitor. So we talked about a couple of things in this governance. One is around compliance. In that area, we talked about the policies and blueprints and things like that. And then in the security realm, we have Azure Sentinel and Azure Security Center, and then we have monitoring. All right, monitoring is required for operations, right? So Azure Monitor is actually another service, managed service that you get as part of Azure. So it actually receives telemetry from different resources, whether it is on-prem or Azure. It actually collects all this telemetry, and then it gives you rich data-driven insights. Whether there are several, and I will go to the next slide and show you what you get. And you can also do workflow integrations, like basically when the CPU utilization is like 90%, do something like do kick off another process or do something else or things like that. So basically it is automation as part of this, right? That's the resiliency part that we talked about in the governance model, right? So there are several signals that we collect from sources into Azure. From the application point of view, we collect application logs. This could be, if it's a Java application, you can get logs from the Java virtual machine or stuff like that. But you could actually write your own logs into Azure. Like you can use the SDKs that we provide, and then you can invoke those and write logs into Azure, which gives more descriptive and detailed application logs, and then and things like that. So. And by default, we collect a lot of things like Gust OS, logs, which actually comes from your OS if you're running an app. That is by default, just like a Windows server or a Linux server. We collect all that, and then all the Azure resources, right? Anything that you host in Azure, you can actually collect. It will automatically collect information around all that, whether it is a PaaS service or anything like that. It keeps collecting all that. And Azure subscription information and Azure tenants. So basically some of the subscription information is around activities in the subscription, Active Directory information, like who is logging in and what is happening and things like that. So all these things are collected, and it goes into the into the database, which is our business intelligence engine, and then we churn this data and then provide you the insights. That's how the application, the Azure Monitor works. So now to give you a little bit more detail around it, everything comes into the two databases in Azure Monitor. One is called the metrics database, and the other one is the logs database, right? So if you have an application, an operating system, Azure resources, the subscription, the tenant, all that stuff that I talked about before, everything is getting pumped into to a metrics database. Metrics database is where you get information around CPU utilization or memory utilization and stuff like that, which is all metrics related information. And logs actually get information around event logs and things happening in the runtime, right? Basically, application specific logs or OS specific logs or things like that. So those two are coming, and you can also have custom logs. You just send any JSON file and it can actually parse it and put it into the logs. So you can connect custom sources, which is actually very good for an on-premises environment or like a other cloud or whatever, like an external public cloud. So all of them go into these two databases, and then the next part of it is more like analytics and visualization, right? So once you get that, you can have application. See, these are all the tools that comes as part of the Azure Monitor suite. So you get application insights, and then you can have log analytics, which is another tool which is part of the monitor. So in the insights, you can look at the application insights, how much, let's say there is an error and you want to see the stack trace or stuff like that, then the application insights will help you to do that. The container, you can actually also have Azure containers services, and then you can see the insights around the container, whether the container is running or not, how many nodes are running, things like that, and around VMs, what is the CPU utilization, memory utilization, disk IO, all sorts of things, and all those things comes under insights. And then you can visualize anything that you see on the Azure dashboard. First of all, you can see it in the Azure dashboard, or you can see it in a Power BI, or you can do all sorts of visualization tools on top of it, like the way you want to. And then there are analysis tools, which is called, there is the main thing I use is log analytics, which is actually a query interface where you can run queries on your logs. Like basically we are collecting ton of logs from everywhere. So if you want to run a query to know what happened at a certain point of time or a period of time, then you run a query on that, and you can actually slice and dice the query. And also you can have charts and tables and all sorts of things on the log analytics using that queries. And also there is Metrics Explorer where you can look at the metrics. Like, you look at the two databases there. So the Metrics Explorer is tailored for the metrics database, and the log analytics is working on the logs query and querying on the logs. So those are the tools that you can use, and then you can respond once this happens. You can respond that with an alert or an auto scale. This is the automation part. You can actually alert. Let's say when I'm always picking up the CPU utilization thing. Let's say the CPU is going up to 90%, then you can set an alert. Or you can set an alert based on a custom query. Like you run a log analytics query, and then when that query condition happens, then you can set an alert for that. So basically, it is a custom query or built-in, finding. You can actually do alerts on top of that, and or you can do an auto scale, for example. Like that's let's say if you have a server that is peaking up, then you wanted to have another additional server added to the pool, then you can actually automate that using an auto scale. So those are the things that you can implement as part of the resiliency for your environment. And there are so many other things that you can do integrations wise. Even hubs is like sending events to actions, right? Even hubs are like, it's a map where you can on the one side you can get events, and then the other side you get actions mapped into that. So basically some of these actions can be picked up from Azure itself. Some of them you can program it. So basically it is event to action mapping kind of technology, right? So you can use those, and then Then you can also have logic apps. Logic apps is a workflow orchestrator. So you can do a lot of workflows when it comes with, when there is a condition happening. So that's pretty much around monitoring and management of your environment. Any questions?
Yeah. Go ahead. I think someone had a question about the map toolkit and whether or not it's used in the cloud.
Map toolkit? I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
The map toolkit is an assessment tool, and that's pretty much used on-prem. So I didn't know if the question was, can it be used on cloud, or does it kind of transfer?
Okay, got it. I'm just so the map toolkit is usually done for finding out your on-premises footprint, and then you wanted to to assess what you want to migrate. But there are other tools also. Map toolkit is one of the ways to do that, but there are things like Azure Migrate. There is a thing called Azure Migrate. We can create a project within Azure and then connect to your on-premises and then start collecting telemetry from that. And the other thing, and the other tools are called Movier. There is another third-party product which is actually work with. They also collect. Map toolkit is kind of rudimentary, I feel. I have not used it, but I'm aware of that. But we actually use tools like Azure Migrate or Movier. Okay. So now let's talk about the governance. I'm still having time. Oh, it's almost done.
Jay, yes, it's we're at 12:30. Just so you
Yeah.
know.
Okay. So should I have one more slide, one or two slides. I'll just finish quickly. So
Okay.
again, yeah. This one, risk-driven evolution. So basically what we are talking about is like, how do you manage the risk? So in the governance actions, we actually, every time you do a release, it's just not a deployment just for the functionality. We also should be aware of the risks. So basically governance has to be part of your release process. That's what I'm trying to say here. So someone has to make sure that we actually always have the release composition, including the governance processes, and then always reevaluate your governance practices as part of every release, and maybe add more tools and things like that. So this is also a multi-state process. The release will always have all these. I mean, I'm not going too far into all that now. We don't have much time. But then, basically make sure you evaluate and the release plan based on the governance requirements and keep evolving on your governance. Pretty much everything. Basically, what I'm saying is releases has to be governance aware. That's all. Again, coming back to your the slide that I was showing in the beginning, this is the full framework, and we have from define strategy all the way to manage in this framework. And this is a pretty cool framework. You should all have a look at it. There is good documentation. Please have a look at it, and then let us know if you have any questions.
All right.
Thank you.
Good resources slide there. Well, thank you, Jay and Sana. We appreciate that a lot. Do we have any questions out there in the crowd about Azure Cloud Adoption Framework? Moving out to the cloud, migration and assessment tools, things like that. We had one question earlier that does the whole cloud adoption framework, particularly the government, or is it done with respect to hybrid clouds?
Yeah, I mean, the cloud adoption framework is primarily for adopting the cloud. So hybrid, it in the migration and then innovation process, we always talk about moving to cloud, right? But there is hybrid tools that we can use for operations and governance and all that. So obviously, when you say cloud adoption, it doesn't mean you're not just moving off of your environment. So it is always talking about cloud environments, but then from an operational and governance perspective, it talks about everything.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I don't think there's any other questions here. I think people are going to go and enjoy their weekends, and Sana and Jay, you guys go do the same.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and hit stop on the recording, and thank you very much. Oh, the deck and the deck and the links will be provided in the discussion area of NOVASQL after this meetup, at least by Saturday, because I got to get the video and post it and all that crap.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.